When walking the dog, Bonbon ran to the 22nd floor of the next building as if he knew the place well, and started wagging his tail at 2201. I was puzzled. The door opened. A pretty girl in slippers came out. She happily rubbed Bonbon's head and said to me, "You must be from Deliveroo. Tell Jeremy that I'll take good care of his dog. Come on, Coco, Mummy's going to give you venison salad today. Jeremy Walton is my husband, and Bonbon is the dog we've had for 3 years." It turns out that during my 6-month business trip, Jeremy had found a new mum for Bonbon. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. I had just returned from a 6-month business trip abroad, the jet lag still weighing heavily on me, when Bonbon dragged me out the door. Bonbon is a 3-year-old golden retriever, gentle in nature but surprisingly strong. He was unusually excited at that moment, practically pulling me forward as he confidently turned into the building next to ours. I was a bit surprised. We live in Block 11, but Bonbon was dragging me towards the lift in Block 12. The lift ascended to the 22nd floor, and as soon as we exited, Bonbon rushed to flat 2201 at the end of the corridor. He placed her front paws on the door, his tail wagging like a high-speed propeller. My mind went blank, the lead in my hand nearly slipping from my grip. What was going on? Why was Bonbon so familiar with this flat? Just as I was pondering this, the door opened with a click. A pretty girl appeared in the doorway. "Coco! Did you miss me?" She crouched down, affectionately ruffling Bonbon's fluffy head, completely ignoring my presence. Bonbon enthusiastically licked her cheeks, emitting contented whimpers. His affection seemed even more intense than what he showed me, his rightful owner. My heart sank bit by bit. The girl finally stood up, her gaze falling on me. She said matter-of-factly, "You're from Deliveroo, right? Thank you for your hard work." She pointed at Bonbon. "Please tell Jeremy that I'll take good care of his dog. Oh, and he's already paid, right? Come on, Coco, Mummy's going to make you venison salad today. Jeremy. Jeremy Walton, my husband." My mind went numb with a buzz. Yet, reason prevented me from losing it right there and then. Instead, I sought to confirm if this was a misunderstanding. "Jeremy is my boyfriend, of course. Didn't he ask you to bring Coco here?" the girl said, and seeing that I wasn't moving, her smile faded a bit, showing a hint of impatience. "What's wrong? Didn't you hear me? Hand it over." She tried to snatch the lead I was gripping tightly from my hand. So, during the 6 months I had been working abroad for our future, Jeremy had not only cheated but had also thoughtfully found a new mum for Bonbon. How ridiculous. This mistress even thought I was someone Jeremy had sent to deliver the dog. I looked at Bonbon, who was wagging his tail and begging for attention from her. After the initial heartache, a cold chill rose within me. I didn't shout or lose my composure to question her. I just slowly pulled out a smile and loosened my grip on the lead. "All right," I said. "Mr. Walton instructed that I must deliver it to you personally." The girl took the lead with satisfaction and casually closed the door. "Good boy, Mummy will make you something delicious now," I heard her say to Bonbon as the door shut. I stood in front of flat 2201 for a long time. It wasn't until the lift doors had opened and closed several times that I turned and went back to my own flat. The flat was spotless, with Jeremy's neatly ironed shirts still hanging on the balcony. Everything maintaining the tidy appearance from when I left 6 months ago. However, there seemed to be a faint, unfamiliar scent of perfume in the air, identical to the scent on that girl. If I hadn't decided on a whim to travel halfway across the globe to come home and check, I wouldn't have been able to discover this secret. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Jeremy Walton returned home right on time. As usual, he changed his shoes in the entryway. When he saw me, he was visibly startled, his expression a bit flustered. But he quickly composed himself and smiled at me. "Darling, you're back. Why didn't you let me know? I could have picked you up at the airport." He opened his arms, intending to give me a firm hug. Fighting back my nausea, I didn't confront him directly. I simply said calmly that the project had finished early. He put on an act, caressing my cheeks. You've lost weight. You must have had a tough time away. It's good to have you back. I'll make sure to take good care of you. What would you like to eat? Roast beef? Prawn cocktail? Fish and chips? He was so caught up in his performance as the perfect husband that he was about to place an order for food. I gently pushed him away and deliberately asked, "No need to cook yet. Where's Bonbon? Where's our good boy gone?" This was our previous agreement not to have children, but to treat Bonbon as our own child. Jeremy froze. He also found it strange. Yes, where had Bonbon gone? Usually, he would wag his tail frantically and beg for Daddy's hugs when he came home. We should call the police. When I got back, I found the front door open and Bonbon was missing. Either someone stole him or Bonbon opened the door himself. It was possible. Our dog was exceptionally clever. He could read, open doors, and even operate the lift. So I was quite certain that if I hadn't come home today, Bonbon, bored at home, would have opened the door to find his new mummy. The smile on Jeremy's face instantly froze. He's really gone missing? Have you looked for him? His tone became urgent. I shook my head. If you don't want to call the police, we can ask the property management to check the CCTV footage. The security guards all know our dog. They wouldn't let him leave the estate with a stranger. He's probably still somewhere in the complex. I observed Jeremy's expression, not missing a single subtle change. Jeremy's brows furrowed tightly. He took out his phone, his fingers sliding rapidly across the screen, seemingly sending a message to someone. After a few seconds, he seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. He looked up at me and said, "You're right. I've contacted the property management. They say the dog has been found. You've just got off the plane, you must be tired. Why don't you go have a shower and rest? I'll go bring our son back." He was such a good actor. That message must have been sent to Nancy Doyle in flat 2201, right? Asking her if the dog had run to her place. Nancy probably didn't know about my relationship with him, thinking some kind-hearted person had found Bonbon and let him stay there. It's just as well that the information didn't match up. I didn't want to keep up this charade of playing the devoted wife any longer. Once he leaves, if I find solid evidence that can stand up to scrutiny, he should be gone for good. I nodded, following his suggestion. My voice carried a hint of well-measured fatigue and distress. All right, then hurry back. I'm worried about him. Don't worry, Jeremy said, grabbing his car keys and hurrying out the door. After he had completely descended in the lift, I walked into his study. His computer was password protected, but it allowed me to unlock it with facial recognition. I easily unlocked it. I didn't bother looking at his social media apps. I knew that a meticulous cheating husband wouldn't leave such obvious evidence. I clicked on his cloud storage. Inside were neatly categorized work files, family photos, and an encrypted folder named My Treasure. My heart started racing. What could the password be? I tried my birthday. Wrong. I tried our wedding anniversary. Wrong. I tried Bonbon's birthday. Still wrong. I stared at the folder, suddenly struck by inspiration. I entered the flat number I had seen on that girl's door this afternoon, 2201. The folder opened instantly. There were no scandalous photos or videos in the folder. That wasn't Jeremy's style. He had a bit of an intellectual air about him and liked to do things properly. Inside were only documents, named by date. I opened the earliest one, dated 5 months ago. Just when I had been away on business for a month. April 12th, rainy. I met her today, like a little deer that had wandered into the mortal world, with clear eyes and a warm smile. She said her name was Nancy, as gentle as the evening breeze. My heart, it seems, was struck in an instant. April 25th, sunny. Nancy knew I liked the mousse from that dessert shop in Westside, and queued for 2 hours to buy it for me. When I was with Vicky, I always had to accommodate her tastes. She liked light flavors and never touched these sweet things. Yet these were what I loved most. It turns out The feeling of being accommodated is so blissful. May 20th. As a thank you for the dessert, I took Nancy to the Peak restaurant we often go to. She was delighted. I told her this was where I met with clients for business. Looking at her trusting eyes, I felt a bit guilty, but more than that, a secret pleasure. Vicky always said that restaurant was overpriced and the food was mediocre. She didn't want to come again. But she didn't know that what was being sold there was never just the food, but the chance to enjoy a spectacular view with your loved one. Vicky doesn't understand me, but Nancy does so well. I scrolled through the pages, my face expressionless. These so-called diary entries were less about recording events, and more about finding excuses to rationalize, or even beautify, his infidelity. In his writing, I had become a domineering, boring workaholic with no appreciation for the finer things in life. And that girl called Nancy Doyle had become his muse, rescuing him from a dull marriage. He attributed all the mundane moments and friction in our 3 years of married life to my faults. When I ironed his shirts to keep him looking neat and presentable, it was because I was vain and controlling. When I reminded him to drink less, it was because I was too restrictive. When I worked hard for our better future, in his eyes it became she's a career woman, she doesn't need me at all. What ridiculous logic. The most chilling part was the entry about Bonbon. July 8th. Nancy said she really liked Bonbon and wanted to keep him. I brought Bonbon to her place, and she renamed him Coco. Seeing how close Bonbon was with her, I suddenly felt that this was the life Bonbon should have. Although Vicky loves dogs too, she's too busy and doesn't spend enough time with Bonbon. Nancy is different. She has plenty of time to keep him company, make him nutritious meals and spoil him like a child. It was as I had predicted. Not only had he betrayed me, but he had also betrayed our shared promise. He had handed over our son to another woman. I closed the document, and the churning nausea in my chest finally subsided, replaced by a cold, dead silence. I didn't delete these files, but copied them intact and uploaded them to my personal cloud drive. Then sent an email to my lawyer. Just as I finished all this, I heard the sound of the door lock turning. Jeremy was back. I sat in the dark living room, without turning on the lights. Jeremy walked in with Bonbon, eager to show off his accomplishment. "Vicky, look! I found him." He handed me the leash, his tone confident. "I told you he's smart and wouldn't go far. He was just circling the garden of the next building, probably looking for new friends to play with." His lie came so naturally, as if he had rehearsed it 1,000 times. Bonbon seemed to know he had done something wrong too, nuzzling my leg affectionately and making apologetic whimpers. Looking at the man and dog before me, I suddenly felt it all so pointless. Just then, the doorbell rang. Jeremy's body stiffened for a moment, but he quickly covered it up and went to open the door. Who could it be at this hour? As expected, Nancy stood outside. She had changed out of her pajamas into a simple white t-shirt and jeans, her long hair tied back in a ponytail, looking innocent and pure. Her eyes lit up when she saw Jeremy at the door. But then, as if realizing something, her gaze shifted past him to me. "It's you." She frowned in surprise. Jeremy was already panicking, desperately trying to signal her to leave with his eyes. But she pretended not to understand, deliberately saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Walton." She stuck out her tongue playfully, then looked worriedly at Bonbon inside. "I thought I heard a dog barking downstairs earlier, and I couldn't stop worrying. I was afraid something might have happened to Coco. I mean, your dog. Now that I see he's back, I'm relieved." This short speech was packed with information. Anyone could tell their relationship was far from ordinary. Jeremy clearly disliked her taking matters into her own hands and tried to laugh it off. But unexpectedly, the dog proved more honest than him. As soon as Bonbon saw her, he excitedly bounded over, circling around her. Nancy crouched down, expertly hugging Bonbon's neck and nuzzling his fur with her cheek. Her voice was as sweet as honey. "Coco, you little rascal. Running off to play without telling Mummy, you scared me to death, you know?" As soon as the words left her mouth, she seemed to suddenly wake up. She hurriedly covered her mouth, looking at me with big eyes brimming with tears. "Oh, I'm so sorry, madam." She stood up quickly, fidgeting nervously. I'm used to helping Mr. Walton look after the dog, and I always joke around calling myself his mom. Madam, you're so beautiful and elegant, you look very understanding. You won't mind my little joke, will you? She kept calling me madam affectionately, but every word was like a thorn in my heart. What a coy, charming, and seemingly considerate little minx. Jeremy stood to the side, his expression awkward. Looking at them, I suddenly smiled. I walked over and gently but firmly took Bonbon's leash from Nancy's side. I patted Bonbon's head, my voice calm and clear. It's all right, I don't mind. Then I looked up, my gaze sweeping over Jeremy and Nancy's faces as my smile deepened. But young lady, you should be careful with your jokes in the future. Not everyone is as understanding as I am. After all, calling someone else's husband intimately and someone else's dog your son. If word got out, you'd only be embarrassing yourself. Jeremy and Nancy were both stunned. I took out my phone and dialed a number in front of them. Hello, Ms. Booth? This is Vicky Nelson. I watched Jeremy's face turn pale as my smile grew colder. I want to file for divorce. Yes, division of assets. He's the one at fault, so I should get at least 70%. As soon as I finished speaking, the air in the living room seemed to freeze. You want a divorce just because Bonbon likes that girl and she calls him her son? Jeremy asked in disbelief, looking at me as if I'd gone mad. He lunged for my phone, but I dodged him. Vicky! Have you lost your mind? He growled, keeping his voice low. Meanwhile, Nancy's face drained of all color. She clutched at Jeremy's shirt. Tears streaming down her cheeks like pearls off a broken string, her voice trembling. Jeremy. Vicky must have misunderstood something. We're not like that. Vicky, please let me explain. Explain? I hung up the phone and looked at her coldly. Explain why you call my dog your son? Or perhaps you'd like to explain the folder on my husband's computer. Password protected with your house number, filled with love notes to you? Nancy's sobs stopped abruptly. She stared at me in horror, like a chicken with its neck wrung, unable to utter a word. She probably never imagined that I, the domineering and boring wife they often spoke of, would tear away the dirty veil covering their affair in such a direct and sharp manner. Jeremy was completely flustered. He knew what those diary entries meant. They weren't just ironclad proof of his infidelity, but a devastating blow to his carefully crafted image of a deeply loving, good man. Vicky, listen to me, it's not what you think. He tried to grab my hand, his tone softening. Nancy and I are just ordinary friends. Those things I wrote, they're fiction. Yes, fiction. Fiction? I shook off his hand, finding it absurdly laughable. Well, your novel is quite realistic then. Shall I help you publish it? We could call it Me and My Darling Neighbor. Vicky! Jeremy was left speechless, flushing with anger and embarrassment. Do you have to make things so ugly? After all these years together, you want a divorce over a small misunderstanding? Small misunderstanding? I felt like I'd just heard the joke of the century. Jeremy, you've shared your role as my husband, our home, even our dog with another woman, and now you call this a small misunderstanding? I pointed at Nancy, who stood pale-faced by the door, and said to him, enunciating each word clearly, from the moment you handed Bonbon's leash to her, there was no love left between us. Only accounts to settle. With that, I ignored them both and walked straight to the door. I opened it and gestured for Nancy, who was still frozen in place, to leave. Miss Doyle, the show's over. You can go now. Oh, and one more thing, I paused, looking into her hate-filled eyes, and added with a smile. In the future, please keep dogs on a leash when walking them. Not all dogs can find their masters as precisely as you can. Nancy's face turned the color of a beetroot. She glared at me fiercely, then covered her face and ran out. Only Jeremy and I were left in the living room. He slumped onto the sofa, all his former confidence gone. Vicky, does it really have to come to this? He rubbed his forehead wearily. I admit, I was foolish. I'll cut all ties with her immediately. Can't we go back to how we were before? We can't go back, I said calmly, looking at him. Jeremy, you weren't foolish, you were calculating. You thought I was too busy with work to pay attention to you. While she was young and pretty, offering you emotional support. So you happily enjoyed the best of both worlds. Now that I've found out, you're afraid of losing the stable, comfortable life I provide. So you're trying to come back. Your love is too cheap. I can't afford it. I took Bonbon and walked into the bedroom, locking the door behind me. I left him alone in the messy living room, facing the wreckage of everything he had destroyed with his own hands. The divorce process was quicker than I had imagined. Early the next morning, Jeremy was waiting outside the bedroom door. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept all night. He no longer spoke of feelings, but of practicalities. Vicky, we can divorce, but we must split the assets equally, he said, staring at me with a coldness and calculation I had never seen before. This house, although your family paid the deposit, is in both our names. The mortgage payments have been made from our joint finances. The car, your stocks, these are all marital assets. Looking at his demeanor, any last shred of affection I had for him vanished. I had just returned from a 6-month business trip, where I had worked myself to the bone to secure a project with a 7-figure bonus. The money had only just been deposited into my account a few days ago, and I had excitedly told him about it. Legally, it was considered marital property. He was after the money. He thought he had me cornered. After all, even if we went to court and I could prove his infidelity, the judge wouldn't be likely to rule too heavily in my favor regarding asset division. In the end, he would not only get half of my hard-earned money, but also leave me feeling sick for a long time. But I agreed to his terms. Fine, I said calmly. My composure caught him off guard. But the house must be mine. Since Bonbon has a new mom now, you can take him. Jeremy clearly hadn't expected this response. He paused, then a glimmer of greed flashed in his eyes. All right. I'll take the dog. As long as you agree to split everything equally, you can have the house. But you'll need to pay me half its value. The house was located in the city center, and had appreciated considerably in recent years. Half its value, plus half of my project bonus, would allow him to walk away with millions of pounds, then run off with his Nancy. He'd calculated it all so precisely. I looked at him and nodded, no problem. You can draft the agreement. Jeremy, like he'd struck gold, immediately retreated to the study and began writing furiously. Afraid I might change my mind, I went to visit my parents. I explained everything to them. My dad was so angry he wanted to confront Jeremy immediately. But my mom held him back. My mom held my hand, her eyes red-rimmed, but her voice was firm. Vicky, don't be afraid. Leaving a man like that is a blessing. Money can be earned again, we support you. But, she paused. I don't want you to give away all your hard-earned money just to spite him. And Bonbon, are you really okay with letting him go? I nodded. I had thought about it all night. I had considered that Bonbon was just a dog, that being tempted by food and being affectionate to others couldn't be held against him. But he was the puppy I had raised from the size of my palm to over 100 pounds. For 3 years, I had poured so much love into him, nursed him through canine distemper and parvovirus, played with him, fed him. Yet all of that was outweighed by Nancy's few servings of venison salad. It was such a bitter irony. Why should I be saintly and keep him? He was as clever as a human child, he couldn't have missed my sadness. But he ignored it, just like his dad. If that's how it was, I didn't want either of them. I hugged my mom, feeling a warmth spread through me, and said softly, Mom, don't worry, I'm not just being impulsive. I have a way to get back everything that's mine, and even more. But I'm truly disappointed in Bonbon, I don't want him anymore. After leaving my parents' house, my lawyer, Ms. Booth, had already sent a document to my email. Looking at that document, a cold smile tugged at my lips. Jeremy, the game has only just begun. 2 days later, Jeremy placed a printed divorce agreement in front of me. A fake smile plastered on his face. Vicky, have a look. If there's no problem, we can go and sign it. The agreement clearly stated that all assets under my name, including the 7-figure project bonus, would be split equally. The house would be mine, but I would need to pay him £3.51 million for half its value within a month. He had calculated it so precisely. No problem, I said, picking up the pen and swiftly signing my name at the bottom of the agreement. Jeremy stared at my signature, his eyes brimming with barely contained joy. He probably thought that I, once a career-driven woman who only knew how to work, had finally stumbled in the quagmire of emotions, becoming hopelessly foolish. Outside the court, Jeremy and I received our divorce papers. He almost snatched the signed divorce agreement from my hand, as if it were some priceless treasure. "Vicky, where there's no love, let there be kindness," he said, extending his hand to me with the air of a victor. "I hope you'll find happiness with someone less domineering in the future." I ignored his outstretched hand, giving him only a cool glance. Likewise. Turning away, I got into Ms. Booth's car. Jeremy drove off in his own vehicle, looking triumphant. I guess he was rushing to flat 2201 to share the good news with his Nancy. "Ms. Nelson, everything's sorted." Ms. Booth handed me a bottle of water. "The next step is to wait for him to transfer the money to Nancy Doyle." I nodded. "He will. Jeremy is an extremely selfish person, but he's also very good at maintaining appearances. To keep up the image of a man who'd sacrifice everything for love in front of Nancy, and to start his new life as soon as possible, he would surely transfer part of the money he got from me to Nancy immediately, as their love fund. And this was exactly what I had planned for. Sure enough, 3 days later, Ms. Booth called me. "Ms. Nelson, we've confirmed that Jeremy transferred £5 million to an account under the name Nancy Doyle on the day of the divorce." Excellent. I hung up and dialed another number. It was the legal director of the client company responsible for our project. When I was on a business trip, for certain reasons, at my suggestion and arrangement, that 7-figure bonus wasn't officially labeled as a bonus. Instead, it was paid into my personal studio account as a technical consulting fee. The consulting contract clearly stated that this fee was compensation for my personal technical services. This contract was signed and sealed by both parties before I returned from my business trip, making it legally binding. In other words, this money was legally my personal property, not marital property. When signing the divorce agreement, Jeremy was so blinded by the prospect of getting his hands on a huge sum that he didn't bother to investigate the source and nature of this money. He only saw the figures in my bank account. And now, I filed a lawsuit with the court on the grounds of major misunderstanding in the divorce agreement, suspected fraud by the other party, concealment of extramarital affairs during marriage leading to unfair agreement, and transfer of marital property during marriage. I demanded a redistribution of assets and argued that Jeremy, as the party at fault, should receive less or no property. At the same time, I applied to the court for property preservation, freezing all of Jeremy's bank accounts and assets. When the court summons and property freezing notice were delivered to Jeremy, he was viewing a £1 million villa with Nancy. He called me, his voice a furious roar. "Vicky! You set me up." My tone remained calm and steady. "I'm just taking back what rightfully belongs to me. Oh, and that £5 million is illegally transferred marital property. The court will recover it. You'd better hope your darling Nancy hasn't spent the money." From the other end of the line came Nancy's shrill cries and the sound of something shattering. I hung up the phone without a second thought. The ending of Jeremy and Nancy's story turned out to be even more dramatic than I had imagined. On the day of the court hearing, I sat in the plaintiff's seat, looking at the haggard Jeremy across from me. He had hired a lawyer, attempting to argue that the money in question was marital property. He claimed that I had misunderstood his novel writing and countersued me for defamation. Our lawyer, Ms. Booth, calmly presented 2 key pieces of evidence to the judge. The first was the original technical consultation contract with the client company's legal department seal, clearly stating that the 7-figure fee had nothing to do with our marriage. Jeremy's lawyer's face changed when he saw the contract. The second piece of evidence was a projection Ms. Booth clicked the mouse. And the entire contents of the folder named My Treasure on Jeremy's computer were clearly displayed on the courtroom's big screen. From meeting doe-eyed Nancy to Vicky is too domineering and doesn't understand life, to giving Bonbon to his new mummy. All of his self-perceived deep love, dirty betrayal, and belittling of me became a public joke. I saw Jeremy's body trembling as he stared at the screen, the color draining from his face instantly, from shock to panic to utter despair. The courtroom fell silent, followed by barely suppressed whispers. The dignity he had so carefully maintained was shattered to pieces in that moment. The final verdict came down. The court ruled that the divorce agreement was unfair and should be revoked. The seven-figure sum was determined to be my personal property and not subject to division. Moreover, given Jeremy's serious misconduct during the marriage, and his malicious transfer of joint property, the division of marital assets would be 70% for me and 30% for Jeremy. Not only did he fail to get a penny from me, but he also had to use his own premarital savings to make up for the money he had transferred to Nancy, which she had already squandered and couldn't pay back. At the moment of the verdict, I saw Jeremy collapse into his chair as if all strength had been drained from him. He had lost everything. Reportedly, on the day of the verdict, Nancy ran off with what was left, while also publicly denouncing Jeremy as the scumbag of the century on social media, distancing herself from any involvement. As for Jeremy, he became infamous in the industry due to this lawsuit. He lost his job, sold his car, and moved out of the neighborhood he once took pride in, tail between his legs. He abandoned Bonbon as well. My mom, still unable to bear it, searched around the neighborhood for several days and brought back the dusty, much thinner Bonbon. She said, Jeremy will be punished for his mistakes. But no matter how clever, a pet is just a pet. If you really don't care for it, it will die. If you can bear that, Mum won't try to persuade you. Bonbon looked at me pitifully, seeing my expressionless face. It lowered its head sadly, trying to break free from my mum's arms to leave. I sighed. The one who gave birth to me was persuading me to keep the one I had raised. All right then. A few months later, I heard that someone had seen a haggard Jeremy at a matchmaking corner for men, seeking to marry into wealthy families. He was enthusiastically introducing himself to an older woman. I turned off my phone. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, shining on Bonbon and me. Bonbon was lying lazily at my feet, yawning. Its collar had been replaced with a new one I bought, engraved with its new name Machi. We no longer used its original name. I was brushing its fur, and Machi contentedly narrowed its eyes. The doorbell rang. I opened the door to see my best friend's beaming face. Vicky! Let's go to that new Michelin restaurant at Westfield, my treat, to celebrate your new lease on life. And we can also discuss the expansion plans for your personal studio. I'm going to invest, you know. Sounds great, I nodded with a smile.